Check, check. Check, check. Hello, hello. Good evening and welcome. All right, fantastic. Thank you all for coming out this evening. I am honored to be here. This is the first in-person event that the Bitcoin Meetup group has had in like 18 months, I want to say, at least. So my name is Chris Groshong, and I'm just really glad that all of you have turned out tonight because I see so many familiar faces and new faces that I'm just really glad that we're able to start doing these again. And so a lot has happened in 18 months. So I have a slide deck that I'd like to start right now and walk you all through everything that's happened since the last 18 months. No, I'm just kidding. Actually, people are looking at me like, oh my God, the free pizza was not enough. Okay, I did not drink enough beer yet. All right, so what I'd like to do first though, because for most of you and for me, like me, this is my first time at this space. And so let's first all give a round of applause to Edge for hosting. And I'd like to welcome Paul Pui up to the stage so he can talk about having Edge in San Diego at this new amazing space. Thanks, Paul.
Thanks a lot, Chris. Thanks, everybody, for coming out. Our team, hopefully the community, has been super stoked about finally seeing everybody, seeing your faces, getting a chance to talk, break bread, which has pizza on top of it, and enjoy the times here. Welcome to our new space. We've been here about a week. Happy to kind of see everyone in person. And happy to help contribute to the community. So this is kind of a bit of an open invite. We're hosting this meetup here. We'd love to get a little bit of help with other events and get more people coming out and speaking. But a little bit about Edge for people that maybe have not heard about us. We are a self-custody application on mobile, allowing people to buy, sell, and trade cryptocurrency. One of the things that we say is, and you've heard of the term Bitcoin maximalist. We're not Bitcoin maximalists, but we are self-custody maximalist. We believe that crypto was built so that you can hold your own funds and send and receive without a counterparty. And that's what we try to ensure in our product and services. So you can use Edge to, like I said, buy, sell, and trade, but in the end, you always hold your own money. We try to make that simple with simplified key management so you don't have to ever look at 24 words, for those of you that are familiar with having to deal with key management backup. So I do invite you guys to give it a try. Check it out, edge.app. And with that, I want to kick it off as well to our HR and facility coordinator who did a lot to help organize this event and for future events as well, Madison.
All right, hello everybody. I've met quite a few of you, but I am Madison. I'm going to be taking over for HR and facility operations. So I'm your go-to person. If you think of anyone in the tech industry or a tangent of crypto, go ahead and let me know. I don't have business cards yet, so find me on LinkedIn. We are looking for volunteers if you want to help set up. Also, contact me, find me on LinkedIn. Let's see, I have a couple of notes. If you download the Edge app tonight, find someone in the Edge shirt and we'll send you $5 worth of Bitcoin. And then, lastly, our next speaker is, Emilio Cazares. It's going to be August 17th. It's going to be another Tuesday right here at 6:30 p.m. So invite your friends, tell your groups and all those things. All right, and then I think we're gonna take it away.
Thanks, Madison. So, like I said, my name is Chris Groshong, and I started hosting this meetup with Paul back in like 2015, I believe it was. And so I've really been fortunate enough to see a lot of great people and meet a lot of great people at events like these. And I started a business called Coinstructive back in 2015 as well. And what we do is we help with crypto fraud investigations. So people who have been scammed and hacked. And then we also provide services for Bitcoin ATM operators in the compliance space so they can handle all their money laundering issues and not have to worry about it. So fun stuff. But it's actually a really great way to segue into our next speaker, or one of our speakers tonight. And of our two speakers tonight, Hailey Lennon, I met actually in 2015 at a Bitcoin conference. I think one of the only real big Bitcoin conferences here ever in San Diego, which, by the way, we need to change, right? We definitely need to put San Diego back on the crypto map and have a real conference. And so we're looking forward to doing that again. And then we have another local guest speaker tonight too. And the great thing is that this is kind of, we get compliance and then we get some technical. So Arie Trouw from XYO is here as well. And he's going to be speaking. So we have this great kind of duality tonight because, it's been so long. Why just one speaker, right? We need at least two speakers, get you guys some real entertainment this evening. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome up my good friend Hailey Lennon to the stage. And by the way, we'll be taking any questions like kind of as we go. So I'll be running around with a mic. So if you have any questions, please let us know. To not drop the laptops.
Hi, everyone. Really happy to be here. It's been a long time since I've spoken at an intimate meetup like this and sort of presented a PowerPoint, so appreciate everyone for having me and hosting. Let me see if I can. So my focus is crypto, regulatory, and legal. And sometimes people find that to be kind of a dry topic. So let me figure out how to launch this and try to make it entertaining for you all. And while I do this, have a drink of your beer, please. See. Okay, so as I said, my name's Hailey Lennon. I have been an attorney in the space for about 8 years. I started at Silvergate Bank here in San Diego, so it's really nice to be back in sort of my hometown where I went to law school. And so today what I wanted to do is sort of walk you through some of the stages of my career, just in case anyone in the room's interested in a career in compliance or legal. But as I do that, introduce some of the regulatory compliance and legal topics that arose through those years, and they all still exist today. So I'm currently partner at Anderson Kill. We're a law firm based primarily on the East Coast, but I'm sort of our West Coast partner presence. And before Anderson Kill, I was regulatory counsel at Coinbase. Coinbase actually has 1,000 employees. A lot of people are surprised to hear that. And so our law firm, our in-house, legal practice was about 33 attorneys. My focus was regulatory affairs for Coinbase. Before that, I was chief legal officer at Bitflyer and legal advisor for Silvergate Bank, which is one of the main banking partners in the crypto space here in San Diego. They're based in La Jolla in UTC. If anyone is curious. So I'm also a certified anti-money laundering specialist, which just means I took a test about the best ways for companies to prevent money laundering, but it sounds pretty cool. So I guess I'll jump right in it. I mean, what I want to cover today, like I said, is my crypto journey, some of the regulations that apply in this space. Some you may be familiar with, some may be a little bit more in the weeds. We'll try to keep it entertaining. And as Chris said, there's a microphone. If you have a question, grab it. I'd rather this be conversational and entertaining. And so we'll touch on crypto regulation, and then why does this all matter? Why does the technology matter? Why does the regulation help, hurt, that sort of thing? So as I said, I started my career in crypto at Silvergate Bank. Before that, I was with a wholesale currency exchange company here in San Diego called $X. They did wholesale currency exchange for little exchange centers along the Mexico border. That did pesos to dollars. And so obviously there are money laundering concerns there the same way there are for exchanges and cryptocurrency companies in the space. And so when I joined Silvergate back in 2014, they were really trying to figure out how do we bank this industry, because regulators have this idea that cryptocurrency is so much more of a risk when it comes to money laundering, that it's used more often, that it's anonymous, that it can't be traced. And so part of my role at Silvergate was really talking to regulators and explaining why those things aren't true, the ways in which you can mitigate the money laundering concerns and the increased concerns. So at Silvergate, my focus was really banking the crypto space. And the reason Silvergate wanted to get into this space is because major banks wouldn't and really still won't bank the industry. The money laundering concerns of banks pretty much prohibit them from internally sort of approving banking the industry. And so a lot of large companies, even today, have trouble sort of diversifying their banking relationships and making sure that they have business continuity and they won't sort of like lose a bank account one day and not be able to operate. So at Silvergate, the focus really in my role was analyzing cryptocurrency companies, from very large companies like Coinbase to smaller sort of funds and miners, even software developers and games that incorporate virtual currency, and trying to risk rate which companies were too risky for the bank to provide banking accounts to. And that has to do with what those companies' compliance programs looked like and the things they did to mitigate the money laundering risks, and also just reputational risks. So the first sort of regulatory slide I wanted to go over, and it's okay if you don't want to get in the weeds, but this is a helpful reference for some people. So back in 2013, FinCEN put out guidance. And what they really did is they tried to bucket cryptocurrency type of companies, and if they would be considered a money services business, and if they wouldn't be. And what that means is, under FinCEN, if a company is a MSB, a money services business, they need to have an anti-money laundering and compliance program. They need to have a chief compliance officer. They need to have transaction monitoring tools. They need to file suspicious activity reports. They need to have training on compliance. They need to do annual audits, sort of everything that comes along with being a money services business. And Chris, if you may have things to add about this, because this is sort of what, in some ways, what your company helps with. But what this really said is that if you are a user, an individual in this room using virtual currency, you're not a money services business. You don't need to have your own compliance program. And the same, for the most part, goes for miners and wallets. Now, there are ways in which a miner or a wallet provider could do something that would take it more into an administrative / exchanger route, meaning you're actually taking dollars and exchanging it for Bitcoin in some capacity. And as soon as a company is facilitating that sort of transaction exchange between dollars, yes.
I already have a question.
Okay.
So
I hope I have an answer.
so for instance, my company is a layer 2 company on top of BitCloud, which is the new social blockchain. And so, for instance, my question would be then, if, for instance, we're using Wire. You know Wire, the name of the company?
WYER,
Yeah.
or RE. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so if we're using Wire to exchange for Bitcoin and then into BitCloud, does that make us an exchanger or Wire an exchanger?
Yeah, so it's a good question, and I don't like to do the lawyer disclaimer, but with that question I have to. Like, I really can't give like legal advice. What I'll say is that there are ways in which a company could utilize another company's licenses.
Okay.
I don't know if that applies to your situation, or usually there actually needs to be some sort of like formal contractual agreement about the principal agency relationship between the two parties. There is a way in which a company can benefit from that, but it's definitely worth being cautious of, because if you get into the world in which you're facilitating those exchanges and you aren't doing those things, it's not good. I don't know what your role is, but yeah, I mean, especially if there's someone who's like for a money services business, chief compliance officer can have personal liability for if the program isn't up to par compliance-wise. If you're pretty much being an unlicensed money services business, there's, penalties that could come along with that. So, I don't want to get too in the weeds, but what Chris mentioned is that he helps crypto ATM companies. I think there's other people in this room who have been involved in crypto ATM companies through the years, and crypto ATM companies are very similar to a Coinbase or an exchange, take dollars in and give cryptocurrency out. And so as a result, they're considered a money services business. They need to have all the compliance programs. So all of this is just to say that FinCEN really early on started providing input to companies like exchanges and banks wanting to bank this industry on who was sort of high risk for money laundering and who didn't pose that same risk. And so at Silvergate, this isn't identical or any sort of like inside information of Silvergate's, but what we tried to do is start grouping companies by how FinCEN defined them. So a user or a miner or a fund is not an MSB, and if they just wanted an operating account at Silvergate Bank, that's really low risk, even though, if you go to a Bank of America and you say, I'm a cryptocurrency fund, I want a bank account, they're going to freak out and not give it to you. That really is, like, in the scheme of things, very low risk. You're not touching a company's customers' funds. Now, on the other side, if a bank is providing a bank account to a Coinbase and they also are providing a trading account, they're actually touching Coinbase's customers' funds. And so it becomes a lot more important for the bank to understand, sort of know your customer's customer. Like, is that exchange's program good enough that they've mitigated the risk that you are now holding on to illicit funds or terrorist financing? So I don't know if, does anyone, I'm going to go on to sort of like foreign entities now. So I don't know if, Chris, if you had anything to add about anti-money laundering, or if anyone has any more questions there.
I don't really have a whole lot to add. You covered a lot of it. I would say that the thing is that you pointed out, I think that is important, is that, well, first off, a lot of people who have been coming to this meetup for a long time have knowledge of a very specific event that happened to one of our own here, who was a unlicensed money services business and ended up going to jail. So we all here in the community understand this and take this very seriously. So, it's not something to be laughed at or like scoff and be like, well, they're not going to come after me. They actually will come after you. They are slapping people on the wrist, but they are also throwing people in jail. So a little more than just a slap on the wrist. So you really have to be careful. Take this space seriously. You don't always need a lawyer, because I've met lawyers who don't know what they're talking about. No offense. I'm sure you've met them too.
I'm not one of them.
But you've met some of them.
Yes, I have. I've paid some of them.
Right? And so do your diligence. Make sure you find smart people who are actually, if you are in that industry, it's like, do your diligence on the people who are going to be doing that work too. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think.
Any questions though for Hailey at this point? Oh, look at that. Here we go. James.
So if you're selling Bitcoin at this meetup, you're a criminal, because if you don't have an MSB license.
I wouldn't say criminal, but potentially in violation.
There's actually a threshold how much money is exchanged before.
Oh, how much is that?
I don't know the number now. I know like the 2014 number.
Okay, it just sounds like the regulation means that that which is money cannot be used as money.
Well, I think there's a difference between sending funds or purchasing goods with funds versus taking dollars in and exchanging them. And when that happens, the identity of the counterparties are important. But, whether you agree with it or not, that's what FinCEN feels. Yeah.
Yes, I have a question.
Yeah.
When it comes to providers of P2P trading with physical items and crypto, Bitfly is the one that helps people with, is it true that it helps people with discount cards or gift cards trade for cryptocurrency? Is that? Or is that Bitstamp?
Yeah, I don't, Bitflyers in Japan may be
Okay.
involved in that. I'm not sure. I think Bitstamp is involved. I'm not quite sure on that.
Okay, well, when it comes to Bitstamp, or let's say there's, I think, a popular website called Purse that helps people with crypto, and people with Amazon baskets trade. Basically, someone will pay for the Amazon basket with cash, and someone will ship it to the person, the original crypto person's house, and then basically the crypto person has already paid for it. So basically, the provider of the website never touches any crypto or cash and never takes custody. How does this website go about, finding where it lies inside here? Because it's just connecting two different people to trade crypto for physical items.
So I'm not that familiar with that business model, but if you're providing, what we talk with a lot of clients about is there are ways in which you can be a software provider and not actually facilitating the transmission of money. And so that might be what you're talking about if it's utilizing like a prepaid card as an intermediary. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd have to like look into that a bit more to give a full sort of advice on that, but I would say that that might fall within where it's sort of a software provider and there's an intermediary being used instead of the Bitcoin rails. So it's sort of like the purchase of a good, and that good is a prepaid card or access to Amazon.
Right. So it would fall into the same category as like Uniswap, which that would obviously be a software provider. The code is handling all the custodies, right?
Yeah, I mean these are tricky. These are things that people pay a lot of money to like actually dig in the weeds. I mean, Uniswap in a way is doing a decentralized exchange, but I'm not sure that they fall fully outside of the regulation, or in the future that they will. I think there could be enforcements going on.
Right. Yeah, do you know of any ongoing court cases where might be a ruling coming down the pipeline? Because this is what I'm interested in.
Yeah, I can't. I don't like from any sort of public information.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Innovators in the States, do you think we should come to lawyers first and get clearance, or just build and see where it goes?
Ask for permission or beg for forgiveness?
No, I mean, coming later honestly is more expensive. It really is. Like the clients, the companies I've been involved in have used law firms sooner than later, and I know that's not. I mean, I know that lawyers and regulation is not like a popular. You guys are really putting me on the spot here. No, I mean, look, I think I have plenty of clients where they've come to us after the fact, after they've realized that they've done it the wrong way, or they have a enforcement action on their table, or even just like a FinCEN IRS exam, and they're freaking out, and to sort through what they've done ends up costing a lot more than just learning about it on the front end. So, and that's unfortunate when you talk about innovation, because that costs money, right? And there's a lot of startups that don't have a ton of money and they're pre-funding, and they'd rather not, and plenty don't, and there's even people that
Don't even have organizational structures either. There's no company that do this
right,
in some cases.
yeah.
How does that work? An emerging DAO business.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be very transparent that I think my law firm is probably more conservative than some in the industry, and our opinion is that there isn't that a lot of the DAOs aren't decentralized enough to where it's actually not some sort of organization that can be violating a law, should have to be subjected to them. And when you're talking about like actually representing someone, you have to have a client, you have to have an entity or a person that's paying you. So that's tricky. I think I think innovators in the space are really good at challenging, not just regulators, but attorneys on like how do we make this space function.
Do you accept safe in the last one?
We don't. We do accept Bitcoin through BitPay, but not safe, man. I'm sweating up here. Yeah, I'm actually going to get to that. So I think that's the next few slides. So let's go there, and I'll definitely touch on that, because so what I wanted to touch on next is sort of this idea of, after Silvergate, I joined Bitflyer. Bitflyer was the largest Bitcoin exchange in Japan, and they said, you know, we can come to the U.S. and have a presence there and really sort of start to take the market from some of these other exchanges like Gemini and Coinbase. And what they, you know, didn't realize and brought me on to sort of help explain to the Japanese executive team is like how insane U.S. regulation is outside of FinCEN. So there's a whole world, which is what you're talking about. So in case some of this may be, I don't know why it's animated. Some of this may be, have you all already know this, but just sort of like high level. Every state has a money transmitter license. Some states have written the money transmitter license in a way that is not broad enough to cover cryptocurrency. So there are about 10 states in the US that are considered no action states. And in those states, you could launch a Coinbase today and not have a license in those states. And one of those states is California, surprisingly enough. On the other end of the spectrum, you go from no action states to money transmitter states to the BIT license. And the BIT license is a New York specific license that covers any companies that want to provide services to New York residents. The definition of New York residents is very broad. If you interpret it, you know, conservatively enough, it would mean that it would cover people who are in New York in passing. But most people don't think that that's what they meant by that rule. So in general, it's a New York resident is someone who lives there. And if you're servicing someone with a New York address or, you know, but is logging in from a New York IP, you know, perhaps. So when I joined Bitflyer, they wanted to get all the licenses and get the BIT license as soon as possible. To use an outside law firm that costs like $500,000. I was helping with a lot of that work, and we ended up being the 4th recipient of the BIT license, and that meant we could, it's good marketing for a company. It means that you can sort of tap into that customer base. And so that was sort of my first 6 months at Bitflyer, was like figuring this world out and applying to those licenses in every state, getting the New York BIT license. The one state that for a very long time had no cryptocurrency exchanges was Hawaii, because they required a double capital requirement. So a company like Coinbase would have to hold reserves in the equivalent of Bitcoin that they owed to customers, and also in the equivalent of dollars that they owed to customers. So if they owed customers $200, obviously they owe them a lot more than that. If they owed a customer $200, they had to hold $400 for capital reserve, which is just not financially, you know, possible for these companies. So for a long time, Hawaii was just not accessible, and anyone in Hawaii who was like trading on these platforms had just figured out a way around the KYC. Today, there's like Hawaii has started to do a sandbox where companies can try to operate in Hawaii and start to work with the regulator and sort of get to know the regulator and eventually expand there. Did someone have a question?
I have a question. I know Puerto Rico isn't a state, but where is it on that?
They have a money transmitter license. They're more friendly to crypto companies than many others. They also, in a few slides, I'm going to go over sort of like alternative licensing, and they have sort of like a special purpose charter type entity that crypto companies can get. It sort of like makes them like a crypto bank in Puerto Rico. Yeah. So then on the federal level, and then we're going to get to your question about like Wyoming and all of that. So what a lot of people don't realize is that on the federal level, after a company needs to go comply with 50 states and get the BIT license, and after you get all those licenses, that means that you are subject to exams in every state. When I was at Bitflyer and at Coinbase, we were usually subject to 3 or 4 state exams at any given time. Like at any given time, there were regulators in our conference room doing an exam, and it's just like insane. But then on the federal level, you have these different regulators that are sort of defining crypto in a way that allows them to regulate the space. And it adds this layer of complexity for companies. And even, I know a lot of people in the room are probably more like users of cryptocurrency and just like interested in different projects they might be able to be involved in. And I think these are important just to know about because some companies' compliance with these regulatory agencies impact their value and sort of if they're a good investment, I would say. So obviously we already touched on FinCEN, the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network. They've defined crypto as money, and so as we discussed, there's all these Anti-Money Laundering, Bank Secrecy Act implications, and compliance aspects that a company would need to comply with. OFAC, which we haven't really touched on, is the Office of Foreign Asset Control. What they do is they maintain a list called the specially designated, how am I blanking on it? SDN list, specially designated nationals. And what that is a list of individuals that are associated with like terrorist activities. It could even be like vessels or corporations. And now OFAC even tracks wallet addresses on that. And so a company cannot facilitate transactions on behalf of an individual company, vessel, crypto wallet address that's on this SDN list because it's associated with terrorist financing. The third that everyone's probably very aware of is IRS. They consider crypto not as an asset or money, but they say it's property, and so it's taxed in terms of capital gains. And where this gets really difficult for companies in the space, lawyers in the space, and I would even argue eventually like investors in some of these projects or just like holders of some of these currencies, is that the SEC has a test and a framework for determining what cryptocurrencies are securities and what are not. And so we'll go over that in a slide or two, and I'll show you how that sort of impacted my role at Coinbase and what we would determine to list. But the last two are the CFTC. They pretty much, I mean, I've simplified all of these. The cryptos can be commodities, but that means if a cryptocurrency isn't a security and isn't regulated by the SEC, it would be regulated by the CFTC, especially the spot market in terms of market manipulation. So companies would need to, make efforts to prevent market manipulation. And the sixth is the FTC, really looking at like consumer protection. So all 50 state money transmitter licenses focus a lot on consumer protection. So does the FTC on the federal level, because cryptocurrencies and some of these projects out there can be scams, can sort of be out there just to steal money from people. And that sort of consumer protection is something that regulators, you could say care about. I think they do. I think they also use that as justifications to overstep and surveil and regulate maybe more than they need to. So that's sort of an interesting aspect. So I don't want to get too in the weeds and lose you all, and I don't even know how long I'm supposed to talk for. How long have I been talking for? Have I lost you all? Are you still there? So a few of these slides I'm going to kind of run over, and if you are interested in them, take a picture, read it yourself. I don't want to bore everyone, but what I found interesting at my time at Bitflyer is when all of these regulations started to arise, something that happened internally in the industry as companies started to work towards like working groups, because they said if there's going to be so much regulation in this space, like we need to be part of the conversation to make sure that these regulators aren't just like regulating it the wrong way or like focusing on things that don't really matter or risks that aren't really there. And so pretty much there's a few of these working groups that came out in 2014, Coin Center, Chamber of Digital Commerce, Bitflyer, the company I was with, created the Virtual Commodities Association, which focused on cryptocurrencies that are commodities and how to best do market surveillance and prevent market manipulation. And then there's all these other ones. So as there's been increased regulatory scrutiny from regulators on these entities, there's also been efforts internally, sort of like in the industry, to help mold those regulations so that they don't stifle innovation and sort of ruin the space. So not all lawyers are bad. Some of us are trying to figure out how to help regulators sort of regulate the space in a reasonable manner. So after Bitflyer, I moved on to Coinbase as regulatory counsel. And at that time, while I was at Bitflyer and when I joined Coinbase, there started to be the rise of like all these different altcoin projects, whatever you want to call them, just other cryptocurrencies, that some of them very legitimate companies with great use cases, some of them that do seem to mimic more of sort of the IPO fundraising. And so there was a lot of discussion internally at Coinbase about how do we look at these different projects and figure out what they're doing, what their value proposition is, and how likely it is that they're going to get in trouble with the SEC, just to say it bluntly. So I'm going to go over like what that test is, very high level. We don't have to get into the weeds there. But what I found interesting the other day when I was sort of finalizing this PowerPoint is that since I've left Coinbase, they actually made that framework public. So what they used to do is provide the crypto rating council and how they rated each currency. So you can see that Bitcoin they have is 1 on a scale of 1 to 5. They're saying that Bitcoin is 1, so it's not a security. It's as far away from a 5 as you could be. Something like basic attention token is 2. So there's some things that make it a little bit more likely to be a security based on their framework, but it's still, in their opinion, safe to list. There's others that, 3.75, I think, I haven't looked at the whole thing, but I think Ripple's on there maybe at a 4, and they're, in the middle of litigation with the SEC. So this was the Crypto Rating Council's way of looking at token projects and figuring out their risk. All of this is public information. It's not based on any of my experience inside as attorney at Coinbase. So just to go over it for anyone who's curious, again, we won't get into the weeds, but pretty much the SEC regulates cryptocurrencies that are securities. And to determine if a cryptocurrency is a security, you go back to the Howey test, which is a very old case law that breaks down like the 4 factors of an investment contract. So those are an investment of money in a common enterprise with a reasonable expectation of profit to be derived from the efforts of others. So those are the 4 prongs. If a ICO or a crypto token hits all 4 of those, according to the SEC, it's very likely a security. It should have been registered with the SEC or subject to some kind of exception. And a Coinbase or a Gemini or any company that lists it would be in violation because they're not a broker-dealer. So the crypto space is in this really weird area where no crypto exchanges are registered broker-dealers. The SEC won't really approve that for a variety of reasons. And there's all these tokens coming on board, Binance, Coinbase, all these companies wanting to list tokens, and there being sort of this very broad framework in which to determine that. So in April of 2019, the SEC came out with a framework that applied these 4 prongs to digital assets. And so they tried to explain like different elements or characteristics of a token project that would more likely make it fail one of these prongs. And that, in my opinion, seems to be what Coinbase or Coinbase and the Crypto Rating Council has used to sort of make their framework. So I have a link to the framework, but maybe if anyone's interested, I can sort of show it to a smaller group later and not get in the weeds. But this is just like the front page. I think it has like 48 questions, and the Crypto Rating Council has put different amounts based on if the answer is yes because of it failing. If you see, like, these are the 4 prongs we just went over. And so they've created like a checklist of like 40 questions that if something is yes, it adds a certain amount to this prong. And if at the end they have like a sort of like scale, if the sort of summation of each column is a certain amount, then that's how they rate the cryptocurrency. And so, I just thought it was interesting that they finally made the framework public. It was not public information when I worked there. And it is legally advanced, but I think it's interesting, like, for a project that's looking to create a token or a person looking to like invest in a token, I think that this framework could be very helpful in sort of seeing where on the sort of spectrum or scale a token falls. Because an example, and everyone in this room can have their opinions on different tokens, but like Ripple is in the middle of litigation for this issue, and as a result it became delisted on all these exchanges. And it's when you're holding onto a project and then an enforcement action sort of impacts its worth or its accessibility, that's not great for sort of the everyday user. So let's see. So I'm just going to kind of go over a few of these slides, pretty much coming to the end. But so this slide just represents the fact that these exchanges do, sort of have a delisting policy. An exchange can choose to delist something, and then especially based on whether it is a security under the SEC Howey analysis, especially as the SEC has provided more clarity on that framework and how it applies to cryptocurrency. I think a lot of exchanges have started analyzing. I mean, some exchanges, like obviously Bittrex has a ton. It's not necessarily because their token listing program was flawed in some way. It's that they were listing more to begin with, so then they had more to sort of analyze. So then I think sort of a good ending to this discussion is that my role now at Anderson Kill is helping clients figure out the best route to go in all of this. And so when a company comes to us, like a few years ago, the question was, can you help us get 50 state licenses and the bit license? Now there's been a lot of like evolution in the space where companies have options and ways to get around that sort of like 50 state requirement. And so there are some states that have just trust charters, which would allow a company to just have a charter in that state, have reciprocity in other states, and just custody cryptocurrency, not do the exchange itself. Wyoming has done a special purpose depository institution, which is a state level financial institution. It's not fully some people would say it's a bank. I think that there's probably some question marks around like access to the payment systems and FedWire and FDIC insurance. I think that that's like an area they're still ironing out. But Kraken, for example, went and got the Wyoming special purpose depository institution instead of going down the getting the bit license and that sort of thing. To me, some of the biggest news, you made the joke of like what has happened in the last year and a half. A lot has happened, obviously, but to me, some of the bigger news came out of the OCC, which is the Office of Comptroller of the Currency. Brian Brooks was the chief legal officer at Coinbase and left and joined as the head of the OCC, and he put out a lot of, it's not law, but it's guidance and opinion letters about what banks can do on the federal level in terms of custodying cryptocurrency, dealing in stable coins, and even like exchanging and an exchange becoming a national bank charter. So my firm helped an exchange apply for the OCC national bank charter, and we're starting to see more trust charters and bank charters sort of transition to be regulated by the OCC on the federal level, because then you don't have to do this state-by-state license and examinations. And then you had mentioned Puerto Rico. I mean, so they have something called the International Financial Entity. I have here issue with marketability, not because anything's wrong with Puerto Rico, but I have seen in years past, at least, companies go down that route and just have a harder time sort of with other banking partnerships, and with sort of how to interact with the U.S. and U.S. customer base because of some of the regulation. Yep.
If anybody is doing business in Puerto Rico, Mercury Bank is really nice.
Mercury. Okay. Cool. Yeah, so I have a few slides here, but I want to be mindful of the other speaker. I just, they were pretty much like going into why this matters. I don't know. Okay, I just don't want to cut into anyone's time. So I kind of like to conclude the presentation with like why this matters, because I know that this is like really boring stuff, and it's all like regulators like scared of this and like not into things. So so there's a few things that I think are cool about this space. Obviously, one is innovation. So obviously, like at this very basic, like blockchain recording Bitcoin transactions. But I think that there's like a lot of areas in the world right now that are very like paper heavy, and human effort heavy, that will benefit from this technology in the future. You know, for example, the intellectual property records are currently stored in one centralized database right now. Like if that became an issue, like there's ways in which cryptocurrency and blockchain technology can be utilized to sort of replace some of these archaic systems. I also, you know, talk with a lot of people about inclusion, and that's not just gender inclusion, but the fact that cryptocurrency and these different token projects around the world help women and cross-border remittance and the unbanked. So there's just some statistics on sort of how people around the world have trouble accessing traditional financial institutions, and how this, you know, cryptocurrency and other token projects can promote just innovation and inclusion. So the reason that I love what I do is not because I love like laws and regulations, but I do think that there's a place in which regulation can help make sure that the industry is used for legitimate things, and it's not promoting negative things like money laundering, but especially terrorist financing and sort of human trafficking and those sort of things. Because for the industry to continue and for the goals of you know, inclusion and innovation to flourish, the technology should in some way not be used for bad in ways that we can prevent. So that's sort of my personal view on it, and I appreciate you all listening, and I'm here if there's any questions afterwards or anything like that.
Thank you, Hailey.
Welcome. Thank you for having me.
So good to have you back in San Diego. So, in the meantime, we're going to get ready here for our next speaker. So, like, if you need a break, grab a drink. Now would be the time to do that. Don't hesitate. We'll take a 5-minute break, and we'll be right back.
What's Madison's last name? So she's scheduled.
Everybody, we're going to get started here in just a second. Make your way back if you can.
doubt very few people from that presentation are here today.
Probably not.
Very little.
And it's XY Labs.
This one is the company, but XYO is a token, and crypto and then coins are
So, and you're the CEO and the CTO?
yeah, and the founder.
And the owner of that. That's how I'll introduce you.
Okay.
All right, everybody. Please take your seats so we can get started.
Whistle for it if you want.
It's non-physical.
All right, everybody, here we go. We're getting ready to get started. All right, well, thank you all again for coming. And as I said, we have a two-part special tonight because one presenter is just not enough for a re-grand opening to the Bitcoin Meetup. So, without further ado, I'd like to introduce Arie Trouw. He's the CEO, the CTO, and one of the founders, or the founder of XY Labs and XYO. And so we're just really proud to have another great company here in San Diego in the blockchain and crypto space. And so without further ado, here's Arie.
Well, hello. It's actually very interesting listening to Hailey before this presentation because a lot of the things she was talking about are things that I've lived the last 3 years, basically. It's very, very important for people who want to start crypto companies to listen to her because you're going to be probably giving her about 30% of your money. The regulatory system right now is very, very strange out there, but I'll cover a little bit of that there. So I spoke at this meetup, I think about 2.5 years ago, so 2018 when we did our ICO. My company is called XY Labs. We're around since 2012 or so. We've been making hardware and software products for a long time. But we got into the crypto space because I became a crypto enthusiast. And strangely, I'm also a crypto cynic, which is kind of a strange dichotomy for running a crypto company. But we got into the crypto space because it made sense for us. We were doing a Regulation A+, if you guys are familiar with what that is, at the time. And we also added ICO to that Regulation A+. So we're probably one of the most regulated ICOs in the history of the United States because we were disclosing all of everything we're doing in filings to the SEC as we're doing it going along. However, as I said, that costs money. So about 2018, we did our ICO, and then as you guys are aware, obviously there was COVID, but more importantly, there was the crypto winter, right? A lot of people lost a lot of their ICO money in Ethereum and crypto prices going down, that sort of a thing. So we've been around since 2018. Actually, I want to put my glasses on. Getting old. In most cases, you guys know that ICOs are meant to provide backing or funding for projects, and many people have put those in there. So we raised about $14 million on our ICO and about $14 million on our Reg A Plus in 2018. Actually, the Reg A Plus was about 2017 to 2018. We had a lot of our ICO funds in ETH, and being pro-crypto at the time, we unfortunately held some of that too long, so we lost quite a bit of that value in the ETH, but fortunately we had money from our Regulation A+. And also the cost of capital is very high. So if anybody's doing ICOs, don't forget about the fact that you have to actually pay for advertising to get people to buy your tokens for ICOs. So a lot of your money kind of goes back into that funnel of marketing and promoting your item. So in 2018, things were great. We had money, we were developing the product and everything, but then what went wrong in the industry in general since then? So the last 2 years, I think a lot of things went wrong in the tech space for crypto. One of those is that the dApp platforms never really delivered on their promises. So a lot of ICOs, ours included, really thought about the fact that, well, in 3 years, the Ethereum gas price is going to be low and the throughput's going to be super high and all those sorts of things. It's not true. I'm sure. How many of you guys here, for example, have Ethereum or use Ethereum? Actually, interestingly, how many of you guys actually know how to write Solidity or are developers in the space? And how many of you guys actually use a product that somehow utilizes or is powered by crypto on a daily basis? That actually, I think, is one of the most important or interesting parts of crypto right now. There aren't any products. No one actually uses crypto. So, like, what is the value of crypto? There's money, there's Bitcoin and all that sort of thing, but the whole promise of dApps and decentralized applications never really quite got off the ground. We have Ethereum 2.0 coming out pretty soon. It's always been pretty soon for the last 2 years, but it'll be before 2025 is my guess. No, I'm serious. It's like for it actually to be out and used, it's not going to happen next year. One thing we realized also in the last 2 years is 99% of people don't care about decentralization. So one of the predicates of a lot of the ICOs are like, oh, we're going to do blank, and we're going to make it decentralized. I went to ETH Denver, for example. I would see companies that it's a social network, but it's decentralized. It's eBay, but it's decentralized. But then people realize quickly that it's going to cost you a lot more to run this network in IT infrastructure and gas and all that. But most people who are using things don't actually care that it's decentralized. For example, email. Would you pay 5 orders of magnitude more to use email? Would you pay 5 orders of magnitude more to use a decentralized bank? Say 18% interest for your home loan. You wouldn't do that, right? But I did some math actually a little while ago, and right now on the Ethereum network, it's at least 5 orders of magnitude more expensive and slower than Amazon's AWS to run an application on a decentralized network, which is hugely problematic. So Vitalik came out, right? He said ETH 2.0, ETH 2.0 is going to be 100 times cheaper and 100 times faster than ETH 1.0. Isn't that a quote from him, right? So that makes it only 3 orders of magnitude slower and more expensive at this point. So that's why I say I'm also a crypto cynic to a large degree. Also, there's a lot of, besides regulatory issues, obviously you guys learned a lot about the regulations from the attorneys, but there's also issues like the App Store and Play Store. And getting approved with an app, if you have a wallet, for example, getting in there, it's a lot more difficult than a game. You have to jump through a lot more hoops. We've had a lot of back and forth with Apple and with Google. Granted, we get to know them, but that's not really why we want to know them. Also, there's this thing I call the single use case problem. It's, I wrote an article about this a little while ago, where one of my theories about dApp platforms is there could only be one use case. The idea is that there's supposed to be a whole bunch of different use cases, right? It's a generalized platform where you can use a whole bunch of different things. But what ends up happening is the amount of resources is so limited that you actually have less resources than the number one application needs. So DeFi, for example, being the one right now, actually it was ICOs in 2008. People were spending lots and lots of gas to be the first in line to get the tokens from the ICO. Now it's DeFi. But the problem with that is for you to go and mint an NFT for CryptoKitties or for XYO World, which happens to be a product we have also, it costs you $80 to mint one NFT. That, it's kind of problematic in my opinion. So you have this issue where we haven't figured out how to actually make the ecosystem such that you can have more than one use case that actually is viable on Ethereum or on any of these networks at a given time. Side chains are going to help with that, but we're definitely not there yet. And also, crypto tech is really hard to build. I don't know if you guys, if you're developers, it's not as easy as Node.js or any of those things. On the business side of things, a lot of things went wrong also. So advertising is a big difficulty. Have you guys, who here has tried advertising a crypto product with Amazon with Facebook or Google? Yeah. How did that work out for you?
Not very successful.
It's extremely hard, right?
Just got accounts banned.
Yeah.
Thanks, TikTok.
Oh, yeah, TikTok, yeah, we work with TikTok. It's, we still have an account, but we get all our ads declined, that sort of thing. One of the interesting things we found, I think it's actually on Google, they tell us on the one side that we need a crypto certificate to run for our app. But then you apply for the crypto certificate, and they say, well, you're not a crypto company. You're an app company. You don't need a crypto certificate. So we can't get a crypto certificate, yet we require a crypto certificate to run our ads, which is kind of strange, right? It's kind of like the left hand, right hand sort of a thing. But there are ways around that. So one of the ways we went around that is we actually just got our customers by building consumer apps and not offering them crypto. We are building our use case and our user base by providing a useful app that happens to have some crypto aspects to it and lets people onboard a crypto pretty easily, but it's not first and foremost a crypto app. Also, it's centralized. It's not decentralized. I would love for it to be decentralized, but you can't, for the price you need to, you can't actually do that. So that's actually one of the big problems. Banks actually hate crypto also. I've gotten personally banned from Wells Fargo for life. And so have my kids, so have my wife, because of the fact that I run a crypto company. I don't feel so bad because Wells Fargo has done way worse things than I have. Just saying. PayPal also, I'm interested with PayPal. So we can't process credit cards through PayPal. Yet PayPal has recently added what? Crypto. Kind of strange. So another problem with the business the last couple of years, ICOs kept it in Ethereum, as I said before. So the runway calcs for these people, they were like, oh, we have 10 years to develop this project, but now it's 10 months and they can't afford it anymore. We were fortunate. We had our own revenue. We had a company that was actually working, and we had our Reg A Plus fund, so we succeeded at not dying, which actually is probably the biggest thing to make us basically survive the equivalent of the dot-com bubble burst. But this is kind of what the 2018, 2019 was. The regulatory concerns, you guys heard a lot about that already, so I'll kind of skip that. It is kind of interesting, though, where literally in our SEC filings, we have to account for everything 3 different ways, because we have to account for it as if it's a security, and as if it's a currency, and as if it's a asset, right? And then also on top of that, a GAAP formatted version. So that's what our solution to all the regulatory problems basically has been, let's just assume they're all right. So we've actually registered all of our stuff as securities in the different states. Sure, if we're a security, we're registered. We do KYC, so we cover all the money laundering stuff. So we just kind of assume that they're all right, and let's just follow all their rules. It's expensive, but that's the only way to actually be on the level with the government at this point. Exchange listings, also, there's a lot of shenanigans there. I know Coinbase is by far the most reputable company in the industry, in my opinion, but a lot of the other exchanges out there, it's pay to play. And there's a lot of wash trading, there's a lot of issues with the exchanges. So a nice thing about has happened recently is DeFi. DeFi to some degree has helped with that, but there's a lot of shenanigans going on there also. So that went wrong. And then tech support costs. Also, one thing which a lot of people who are starting crypto companies don't think about is that, have you ever tried to help somebody who's a non-techie use a crypto wallet? Now try that over the phone. And you don't even know them, so it's really, really difficult. And then it explains to them why it is that they can't get their money back because they lost it. So for example, our ERC-20 contract has, I think, about $80,000 or $90,000 worth of XY on it that somebody sent, or people sent to our contract, as opposed to transfer to somebody else. They just kind of black hole it into the contract. So, and then irate customers who are like, hey, I lost my tokens. It's really hard to explain to them, this is not a won't, this is a can't. And very important difference between won't and can't, but I won't get into that right now. So what's going right? So I actually think that 2021 and going forward is the up-ramp of crypto, kind of like the same thing after the dot-com bubble of the internet. It took a lot longer. It wasn't like a 1 or 2 year sort of a thing. It was a 10-year thing. Like Jeff Bezos is obviously the champion of that runway there. He made a lot of money after the bubble burst and grinded it out. So that's where I think we are with crypto right now. And for XYO specific, the thing which is interesting is we're coming out with our protocol 2.0. We haven't released the white paper yet, but one of the biggest things we've realized is decentralization is not a very important part of it. People don't care about it, and even if they care about it, they've realized you can't actually accomplish it just yet. It's just not viable. But what people do care about is they care about blockchain, and they care about zero knowledge proofs. They care about using this technology to be able to do interesting things in an efficient way. IPFS, for example, is a great example of a technology which is crypto, but it's not a decentralized network. It kind of is because there's different servers running it, but the exchange part of it hasn't really worked. But their ability to actually hash the files and store them on servers is really, really interesting, and being able to have these IPFS hashes. So a lot of blockchain technologies in a vacuum is interesting. Like, for example, I think on the last slide with Hailey, she kind of listed out a whole bunch of innovation. And I was kind of tongue-in-cheek thinking, well, that innovation's interesting. Almost none of those, if you guys notice, almost none of those require decentralization. There's, like, for example, logistics and tracking packages. You can have a blockchain that has signed package that tells you where everything was, and it's unchangeable because it's signed. But do you have to have it on a shared ledger? Not necessarily. If you lose it, obviously you can't get it back, so it's kind of nice to have duplicates. But if you have it on a central server, it's still unchangeable. The whole point of decentralization to a large degree is unchangeability. So a lot of those innovations actually are blockchain innovations. They're cryptographic innovations. They're not actually decentralized network innovations. So our new protocol actually is more focused on that aspect of it and using our initial protocol in a centralized way, and to be able to provide companies ways to build technologies that actually do some of those innovations she was talking about there. But then also what we did was we did Coin. Coin is an app, you guys can download it from the App Store or Play Store, because we worked with Apple and Google for quite a while on that. And what that does is it's a simple app where you can go around and you can geomine the world, and we give you coin. We actually originally gave you XYO, but that was problematic for a variety of reasons. So we stopped giving people XYO. We give them coin now, and the coin has a fixed value, and then a person can actually exchange it for XYO. Or they can exchange it for other goods and services and stuff like that. But it's almost like a reward program, kind of like your American Express thing, but it teaches people about crypto. So it's an easy way for a person to get involved in crypto without having to go out and buy crypto or set up a mining rig necessarily. They can get little pieces of XYO, or Ethereum or Bitcoin also. You can redeem your coin for those as well. And so we've gotten about, 1 million downloads or so of our app, and people are using that on a daily basis to mine XYO and Ethereum and Bitcoin in their mines. So actually only mining coin, and they can actually exchange it for something else. We've actually had one customer, we have this on our website now, we had this one customer who, starting early on, he was mining coin, and he was redeeming it for XYO over and over again. And this was when XYO's price was quite low. It was like, I want to say 0.0002 cents or something like that at the time. Because we had the normal curve like this for most of the ICOs. And now our price has gone up to about half a cent. The guy has actually made close to $70,000 or $80,000 of just letting this app run on his phone while he's driving in his car. So it's quite possible for people to do interesting things, but they can partake in crypto without having to figure out how to get their Visa card to actually send money to an exchange or do a wire transfer or whatever it is. So it's a great way for people to get involved. And then, so we also expose them to XYO. What is XYO? Why is it there? And so that's really been our way of driving our user base and really pivoting our company into a consumer product that is based on crypto but isn't required to have a crypto backbone. This is something which I think a lot of the companies out there are missing. They're thinking that their mission is to make this decentralized network, or they're stuck on this one specific thing, and they're not thinking about how do I become profitable. You still have to be an entrepreneur. You still have to actually pay your employees. Honestly, you got to pay both your engineers and your lawyers. So figuring out how to make actually a product that people want and it's efficient and it's profitable is something which a lot of the projects out there haven't done. And that's what I think we focused on to get us where we are now, where we still have a fairly small team. We have about 20 people. And fortunately, we actually don't even have an office anymore because after COVID, nobody wanted to come back to the office. We just let them stay at home. But anyway, so yeah, it just really expands, to the 99%. The 99% of people out there who don't care about decentralization, they care about coin. They love coin because they're getting crypto. They're seeing interesting things about that. They get to actually, we send the tokens to their MetaMask wallet. We have a bunch of help articles about how to use MetaMask and how to use all these different wallets. And by the time that they're done using coin, they're now people who want to sit in this room and want to learn more about crypto, which to me, that's the most important thing that we need to do. We need to get the 99% of the people out there who aren't sitting in this room to want to sit in this room. Just,
I have a question. I guess you're going totally the other way. The reason for Bitcoin's existence is decentralization.
correct.
So governments and all these institutions can go to a central authority and take it away.
I mean, for Bitcoin, that's great. I'm a huge fan of that.
Anything centralized, whether it's the Federal Reserve or all these centralized agencies which control our lives, including Twitter and Google and Facebook, right? They're all centralized.
So you believe that Bitcoin's not controlled by centralized people?
Which are evil entities.
Yeah.
So why should we trust you as centralized entity, which you could become? You're not evil today, but you could become one tomorrow, just like this other entity.
Well, our token is ERC20. It's decentralized from the standpoint that I can't mine any more tokens. Our XYO tokens are decentralized. So our currency is decentralized. It's just our app and our product is not decentralized. So the only thing that'll happen is if something goes wrong, is I'll stop making you happy as a customer and you'll leave, right? So you don't have to trust me because I'm just offering you a product and I'm giving you something which you want. So I can't take your XYO away. The biggest risk you would have is if we did something horrible and our XYO token price dropped and you were holding on to it and then you're like, well, what happened, right? But me and my company being some of the larger holders of the token, we have a lot of alignment in not doing horrible things to actually make our token tank. So, but at the same time, I would argue that Bitcoin, probably the most decentralized, best thing in the world right now, is still controlled by 2 or 3 mining concerns out there. It's who decides how large the block should be? Who decides all those things? And do they decide them in your favor, or do they decide them on how much money they can make as miners? Should you trust them? That's my cynic part coming out, where the thing which is interesting is anything which so far has been decentralized naturally kind of like floats back to centralized. It's just because that's kind of like this momentum. Like humanity wants to be centralized for some reason. Even though decentralization as a concept is so amazingly cool, it's really hard to do. And oh, sorry. Looks like I'm bumping it. There, okay. Is that better? Okay.
I'm just going to ask, the thing that's storing your currency, is that open source?
Well, our currency itself is a ERC20, which runs on Ethereum. So basically,
But you're moving it into the app, right?
well, our currency is not in the app. So in our app, we have coin. And so the coin in there is centralized. We control it. We can take it away from you. We can make more, just like Farmville coins, right? So our coin is that, but once you exchange it, once you withdraw it, you actually have XYO, or you have Ethereum or Bitcoin if you want to exchange it for that, and you can do with it what you want, and it's out of our control. We literally cannot do anything with the XYO once it's out of our wallet.
The app isn't open source.
The app's not open source now. A big reason for that is because we also have a whole bunch of people who are trying to exploit the app, right? So one of the difficulties with a lot of like to me, like Uniswap is amazing because them getting it right so it's not ridiculously exploitable is a pretty amazing engineering feat. It's like people just go, oh, that's really cool. It's this Uniswap thing. Like they nailed it. That was a pretty amazing piece of work because the odds of developing something that big and not having an exploit that can bring it down is really tough. And we have people finding interesting exploits in our app all the time. We can also pull back the coin if they do that. So regulatory clarity, like one of the things that that Hailey mentioned was we are getting some comments from them. I kind of find it strange. This is probably more of a legal thing, but I find it strange that the regulatory heads can almost like mine law or mint law by just writing letters and making these comments. But they kind of do become law because that's what all the lawyers then base their opinions on, because there is no case law whatsoever on these things. There's a few case laws, but most of them are egregious, where they're like Fire Festival level, ICOs, which no, I'm serious. Like there's been a few of those where people go to jail, but you look at it, you're like, you didn't think you're gonna go to jail? Like obviously, what you did is gonna take you to jail. So they don't really provide much clarity on regulation because it's so obvious that anyone would look at that and think that that's fine. So so mainstreaming crypto I think is very important. The Coinbase IPO was huge. ETFs awareness, but at the same time there's always more pressure from the regulators to kind of slow this down, which is interesting. I think actually one of the things that's interesting that's good is the ICO herd has been thinned. If you go out there and you can look at, it's probably what 10,000 different coins or tokens that's on CoinMarketCap or CoinGecko. Of those, how many are dead? Probably 9,000. A lot of them are, right? Like XYO, for example, we're in the 300 somewhere. We're 360 or 370 as of today. But my guess is we're kind of in the middle of the road as far as tokens or projects that are still actually actively doing something. So it's probably good that there's a lot less noise and there's actually thinning the herd, which again is kind of a similar situation to you who are old enough to remember the .com bubble. Pets.com, like they had a website that was kind of cool, but they didn't actually have a business. It's kind of like some of these IPO or these ICOs. They have a white paper, but they don't have a business behind it. And so I think the internet needed a lot of those companies to go away to stabilize and allow the innovation which we've gotten so far. So I actually am very optimistic on the crypto space long term from a business standpoint. I'm aiming towards myself again there. So I think there's a huge green field ahead right now. I think DeFi is interesting, is making crypto relevant, even though it has a big problem with the fact that it's become the single-use app right now where it prices people out. It's gotten better, but it still prices people out of a lot of different dApps that could be interesting on there. I think one of the important parts for crypto startups is to find benefits for everyday things people want to do without making it 4 or 5, 6 orders of magnitude more expensive or slower. It's actually very difficult to find those niches. Bitcoin's a good example because it's doing stuff that you can't do with a regular bank. So people are willing to pay, $3, $4, $5 per transaction. You wouldn't be willing to pay $5 per check, would you, for your Wells Fargo checking account? But Bitcoin's interesting because you can actually send money to somebody in a different country, which is cheaper than a $20 wire transfer. So they've actually gotten something which they can do for cheaper and better than a bank. So that's like a huge win there. But those little spots are really hard to find. Valuations are actually interesting. So that's one of the things that I find fascinating about coins. And you have this popularity contest thing, the Dogecoins of the world and stuff like that, which is kind of fun to watch. But I've always kind of tried to figure out, well, what's the PE ratio of coins? Like for example, XYO right now, I think our market cap for our tokens is about 80 million or something like that. That could be 10 times too high or 10 times too low. I have no idea. How do you know? What is the right market cap for tokens for a company like mine? Especially given the fact that if I sell my company, the only thing that happens is the tokens that we own goes to a new owner, but the people who own the tokens don't necessarily get part of that sale price, do they? So it doesn't have a traditional exit like a normal company. So how, what is the basis for a valuation in a crypto other than scarcity and popularity, basically? But I think we've gotten better with that. If you look at most of the curves that are out there, they're actually mimicking the correct thing. The ones that are dying are dying. The ones that are still around are getting better. I think if you look at the top 10, most of them actually should be on the top 10. I think the valuations have gotten right. I just don't understand how or why they've gotten it right, but I'll be happy with that. And then figuring out what parts of the tech stack should be crypto-based and what shouldn't be crypto-based. I think it's a very common mistake a lot of technologists like myself have made, where they're optimistic. They're like, oh, like for example, I've written Solidity code to completely do automatic payouts for transactions. So a person's like, hey, I want to get paid when this box arrives at my door. I have Solidity code that does all that. Little hardware device, put it in there, it all works. The hardware device is going to cost you $10, and the transaction is going to cost you probably $30 or $40. So for you to get verification that your package was delivered by Amazon Are you going to pay $40 extra for that? Probably not. But it exists. It's kind of cool. But figuring out which parts to make crypto and which parts not to make crypto, I think, is a very important question for people to ask. Also, I think an interesting thing is everyone perceives crypto as something to be mined. Like that you have to actually, you run a mining rig, or the way you get it is by mining it. But most of the ICOs and most of the cryptos out there are ones that people are going to sell, and then you can use it to pay for something, which is really just a virtual currency. It's a decentralized virtual currency, as opposed to a mineable thing on a decentralized network. For the Bitcoins of the world and the Ethereums of the world, I think that'll continue to exist, but it's not going to be the case, I think, for most of the cryptos out there. But most importantly, I want to kind of end with this, is that anything you do, X plus crypto has to be better than X by itself, because otherwise you'll fail. And I'd say 95% of the projects I've seen out there, they at least believe X plus crypto has to equal X, but reality, they think that even X plus crypto being a little bit less than X is okay, because people love crypto and people love decentralization. And I just don't think that scales past the 1% of people who are willing to actually pay for the cool factor. So any questions?
Questions for Arie? Here you go.
So your currency, sorry. It's all based on mining from a cell phone. Is that what I picked up there?
Well, the currency was originally, we minted, I think it was 100 billion tokens back in 2018. And then we burned about 80 billion of those after the ICO was done. And so the rest of the tokens just exist. And so we owned about half those. The other half was the people who bought them in the ICO. And then now the way that we're using them is we do a couple of things. One is you can earn them by using our coin app. Two is you can actually stake things or contracts that actually make your mining better. So it's part of a metagame to actually improve your game. So what we try to do is we try to color outside the lines as far as the apps go, where your behavior in your app isn't just predicated on your settings in your app or your actions in the app. It's by the outside world. So where you physically are matters for your mining. Things you do. So we also have like a micro, actually I call it a micro gig system, where we have a couple partners who want to know, for example, are stores still open or restaurants still open? So they'll pay you to go and take a picture of a store to show if it's open or not, and we pay you in coin, and then you can redeem it for coin. So it's almost like a micro Uber, where you actually can do these micro tasks in the real physical world. So we're still in Oracle, because the name XYO comes from XY Oracle. The idea is we're Oracle of the real physical world. And so we have a lot of Oracle isms, for lack of a better term, in the app, where a person can go and do Oracle stuff to get paid for it. Also,
it's
just
like a Mechanical Turk almost.
Some of it's Mechanical Turk, some of it's also just passive, right? We can look at where the SSIDs are, so we can see SSIDs and signal strengths and stuff like that, which become valuable for certain of our advertisers. Or just population density, where people are going roads. A lot of our consumers drive a lot, so we can kind of see what parts of the world people can get to and what parts of the world people can't get to, for example.
And then how is that fed back to an API that the app can access? Is that?
Correct. So we feed all that data back to the API. And really what we're doing is we're exchanging coin for your data. And some of that data is passively generated, and some of that data is actively generated, like a survey, for example, or a picture. Another one we do is scanned products. You go to Target and they say, they want to know which shelf is their product on. So they'll pay us to find that out. We have at least 3 people go and scan the barcode to prove it's actually a Target, and to say, well, this was in the bottom shelf or the top shelf, or was it in the end cap?
What would something like that cost?
What would it cost?
Yeah, like if I wanted to ask somebody to go check Target for something.
Well, it depends on the scale. So, for example, if you want just one, it's going to be difficult. But like most of our partners will have, like a list of, they want to do 1 million requests for that, 1 million different things, and then we'll charge them.
So, like, I could ask how many Targets right now have, like a GoPro camera in stock.
Yeah, it'll take a little while for that to happen, because all people have to go out there and do it. But for each check, it's probably about 25 cents.
Okay.
So it costs you 25 cents. We give half that to the customer, and they might go to Target and scan 15 different things. And so when they go to Target, they make an additional $3 or $4, right?
So that's really useful for like marketing purposes, right?
Correct, for marketing, or for also just understanding, am I actually getting, for verification, right? I paid for the end cap, but Target didn't actually put me on the end cap. So you can verify is something actually there or not. And so really verifying real world data is what a lot of the practical purpose of coin is and XYO is. But most people who are using it aren't thinking about that. They're having fun. They're just, they're using coin, they're mining, there's some games in there's some leaderboards. You can, do a whole bunch of different things to partake in the crypto world, but you're actually generating very interesting and very useful data for data consumers. And that's how we're paying for the coin to give them. So we go out and buy XYO on the market, we take that and we give it out to people. And so we actually build a company that literally has a product line where we're circling our tokens, and it actually is a net profitable system, right? We do about, I think it's close to $1 million a month in revenue on a lot of those things.
Excellent. Questions? More questions?
Have one from online if you want to swing back over here.
Yeah.
All right, so I have JD asking, can you comment on any partnerships with FedEx?
Well, I can't comment on partnerships in general. One of the things that's difficult for me is since we're a publicly filing company and we deal with the SEC and that sort of a thing, like I can't go out and disclose to this group of people, for example, something which has not been disclosed publicly. So if I write an article about it or if I say something about it, then I can disclose it. But if I say to these people, oh, we have this huge deal with blank, and then either our stock value goes up or our token value goes up, that's insider or it's inappropriate SEC behavior. So no, I can't really comment on that. But sorry.
Just related to that, if you're allowed to go buy your coins back, so you have the inside information, you're allowed to go buy the coins back when you know you have big things coming.
Well, we just do it on a, it's kind of like the way that Bill Gates sells his stock. He's like, hey, I'm gonna sell, X percent per day just in perpetuity. So we just buy on a programmatic way. So we don't care what the price is. We just buy. And then, so we don't.
No game theory behind your buys. It's just a regular.
Well, it's kind of like gasoline prices, where it's just, if more people buy gasoline, more purchases happen, that sort of thing. So we have to refill our tank. So in theory, the price that we care about for our XYO is how much it would cost to replace the XYO that we actually didn't give out. And so it's just, we have it's based off of the activity and that sort of a thing. So it's, we intentionally make it so it's not that thought out. And we also have a lot of XYO, so we honestly, we don't.
Seems like everybody can have the information.
Yeah. Well, yeah, in theory, if we were going to buy it where we're like, hey, we're going to buy a lot today, but not a lot tomorrow, if we start doing that, that's problematic, right? So, yeah.
The revenue you mentioned and subsequent profit, that goes to burn token then, or buybacks?
No, so that goes into the company for operations and paying employees and that sort of a thing. So it's one of the interesting dichotomies of our company. So we have two main stakeholders in the company. We have our shareholders, so we have a Reg A Plus. We have about 30,000 shareholders. They don't care about the tokens other than the company owns a bunch of tokens, so if the token value goes up, our asset goes up.
Yeah.
But the money goes into the company for doing those activities. And then we have the token holders, which care about it differently. So it's a really difficult fiduciary job for me. I have to kind of watch for both of them, right? Like I can't do something which really benefits shareholders and then costs token holders or vice versa.
So is there a priority of one or the other, or how can you balance those two?
Well, that's a great question for Hailey, actually. I've actually been asking that question to some other government people. Which fiduciary responsibility do I actually have a greater responsibility to? 'Cause fortunately, I haven't really been faced with a question like this, but it's very possible a question might come along where it's really good for one and really bad for the other, and I have to make a decision. I can't split it down the middle.
Well,
and what do I do then?
And so some of this is actually being decided right now. Template law is being actually formulated around the Uniform Commercial Code. And so for this particular reason, because when you have a windfall event and you have to give money back or you have to give back to the shareholders, right? Who goes first and what are those assets and when do you sell them and what do you sell them for and how do you value all that stuff? So you have all these traditional lawyers who are like, this was never written this way, right? So they're just like the SEC stuff, right? No one talks about this from the commercial code standpoint, but it's a really big issue right now, and the underlying issues are being discussed. There have been for the last 2.5, 3 years, and so they're actually just coming up with template law right now.
Yeah, I'd love to know what the answer is to that when it comes out. Because, like, for example, if I sell my company for, say, $1 billion, should I take a third of that and buy tokens on the market to make the market price go up, or should I not? Or half, like, I don't know.
Or can you?
Or can I? Yeah, so it's also possible doing that's actually illegal. And I go to jail for actually trying to give money back to the token holders. That's one of the difficult things. You know, a lot of these things, like I literally complete the fact that I don't know what the answer is because I've asked, literally, like when we've done our SEC filings, we've been on the phone with the SEC and we ask them, they say, well, you can't account for it this way. So, okay, well, how do you want us to account for it? Well, we can't tell you that. But it's not right the way it is. So it's okay, well, we'll just try a different one. We say, sorry, that's still not right, but we can't tell you. It's the strangest thing where they won't tell you actually what they want, but they'll just tell you what they don't want. And so same kind of thing with this, like no one will give me a straight answer. I think part of it's because they don't know the answer, right? They haven't, the only way they know the answer is when this actually goes through court, when somebody decides that they're in this case law. And so this is actually, it's a huge greenfield for attorneys as well. I actually think it's kind of nice for you guys to have like the company side and the attorney side for this presentation. Because the attorneys, I actually think the future for crypto attorneys is very bright, yeah.
Yeah, it very well is because I've been actually hiring a lot of interns from the law school here in San Diego, Cal Western Law School. One of them was here today, earlier for crypto fraud investigation work. So yeah, they're looking at any avenue to get exposure. Any more questions for Arie? Here, can you speak?
So you mentioned the ease of forgetting about the crypto part and the application part, and you mentioned the target application. What are some of the other applications you have for a consumer, and then what are you planning to do in the future?
Well, ones that we have, so we have one called Time, which isn't out yet, but it's kind of like a thing where it really kind of goes into the coin ecosystem. We have one, what's it called? We have a couple that we kind of put out there as a little beta apps that are similar. They're not a map-based version of that, right? So one of the things we're looking at is kind of like, well, how do we do similar things to what Coin does, but without it being completely geocentric? Like potentially also just having it so that you can actually do surveys, for example, without having to be at Target or at a specific place. So there are a lot of interesting ideas like that. It's Coin's been doing great for us, so it's really hard for us to say, oh, let's not develop further on Coin and try something which we have no idea if it's going to work or not. So it will probably be a while before we actually launch in earnest, something which is going to be out there that's very different from Coin. We have, like for example, we had an app called XYO, just an XYO app, and all it really was a demo app where it shows the technology and the protocol working and that sort of thing. We have XYO World, which is only a website because we're not allowed to have an app for it because it's NFTs. And so getting an app in the App and Play Store for NFTs is really challenging, as I'm sure you're aware. And so you can go on there, you can get NFTs of different tiles of the world and stuff like that. And they affect how Coin works in various ways and stuff like that. So they're all kind of tied back to the Coin ecosystem.
Yeah, I just had a quick question. You said that you were spending some money on marketing for your coin, and just wondering like what have you done for like the local, right? I know crypto is like for global audience, but because you're a San Diego company, are you doing something locally to get more people into your app, or what has been like best practices in that?
It's kind of difficult to actually target a specific geo for a lot of these things. So, we do encourage some of our partners to test new things they want to do. Like for example, the scanning of products or those sorts of things in a San Diego area, partially because we want to support the area here and have cool features for San Diego, and partially because it's easier for us to actually verify, right? So it's like, oh, if a person does this, we can go and take the picture, walk up to the store and see, well, is this actually the store? So we can actually QA our stuff much more easily if it's physically near us. So we have a few of those things. So often features probably come to San Diego before it comes to other people, just because of pragmatic reasons. For that reason, like we did one of our tests. One was in New York and one was in San Diego, for example, in UTC.
Great, awesome. Thanks, Arie.
Sure.
So at this point, we're just about to wrap up, and I want to say first off, thank you everybody for coming tonight. Round of applause for yourself. Thank you. And also, I just wanted to say again that it's really great to see all of you here, and I'm really excited that we're here. And so I do have an announcement though for next month. So August. Geez, already August. Can you believe it? All right, so August 17th next month, we're gonna have at least one member of the team from Super Rare, who will be here to talk about the NFT marketplace and some of the stuff that they're doing, and so that will be a really great meetup. So get your NFT fix next month here. And now I'd like to bring up Madison to go ahead and do a little extra announcement from Edge.
That should say 6:30 p.m., just so everybody knows. That was my bad. Let's see. All right, so Edge is hiring across all boards. If you know anyone or if you yourself are looking, please reach out. We are hiring engineers for engineering, marketing, biz dev, and QA support. So please talk to me if you or anyone you know is looking. Also, we are looking for volunteers. I know I'm being repetitive, but I'm really friendly. Just reach out. We can volunteer together. It's going to be really fun. Lastly, this is a little bit more on the fun side. There are 5 chairs that have free t-shirt. It's like a little sticker underneath, so go ahead and check the bottom of your chair by the end of the night and come see me. See that one was a little bit more fun. Yeah, we got one over there. So come see me. And there's another one, and we can get you the right size. And lastly, we love having you here, but we do have to eventually kick you out. And we are going to be going over to Princess Pub after this. So that's where we're going to be taking this. One more super, super, super important announcement. If I could just get your guys' attention for just one more second.
So guess what, everybody? Tomorrow, there's another event going on. But because we're not all going to be here together tomorrow, we're going to celebrate tonight. So one of our speakers is having a birthday tomorrow. So I would like to bring up Hailey so we can sing happy birthday. Come on up here, Hailey. All right, everybody. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3. Happy birthday. All right, so last thing we used to do this with all the other meetups is try to get everybody to scoot in. We're going to do a selfie so we can post this to social media. So if you guys can move towards the middle.